And Glen Gilmore has not only been #7 among Forbes magazine's top social media influencers, but Inc. magazine has named him among the top 30 experts on the Internet of Things, which is relevant to what he's going to be speaking about today. So Glen Gilmore, please give him a round of applause.
Thank you. There's an overarching question that is a theme throughout Social Media Week, and it's one that deals with social media, obviously, but also deals very much with technology. And the question is, will you be a disruptor or will you be disrupted? We live in an age of connected devices, an age in which our sneakers can tweet and tell our friends how far we've run. An age of smart homes. When we get home, our home senses that we're home, and our home adjusts the temperature in each room the way we want it to be. Devices, things are being connected at a scale that's unimaginable to most of us. Devices of all sorts, whether it's clothing, whether it's watches, are being connected to the internet. And yet, curiously, an interesting thing happened earlier this year at Davos in Switzerland. Eric Schmidt, the chairman of Google, was asked, what do you think about the future of the internet? What is your prediction? He had an interesting answer. The chairman of Google, when asked about the future of the internet, said, I think it's going to disappear. I think the internet is going to disappear. And that was a curious response, and that's the only response that a lot of people heard from that conference, is that the chairman of Google just said the internet's going to disappear. But what he said, what he went on to say, is that there will be so many connected devices that suddenly the internet will become invisible. We won't see it anymore, because when we walk into our home knows we're home. Wherever we're driving, our car knows where we are. But so many more things are going to be connected to the internet. Think of how many connected devices you have. And then when you see the projection of billions of devices, connected devices, it's not surprising, because already, if you think about the connected devices you own or the connected devices you interact with, you probably realize that already it's probably a 3-to-1 ratio. And that number is going to continue to increase, meaning that things that are connected to the internet are going to outnumber all of us in an enormous scale, and we'll be part of the cause of it. When we think of connected devices, I forgot to bring my Google Glass. I was a Google Glass. I am a Google Glass Explorer. Larry said, you got to put it on if I'm going to loan it to you. Now, this looks kind of goofy. This doesn't really work in social settings. You're not going to want to have an intimate conversation with me about anything with this connected device. The fact that I have a watch that can also do all kinds of things that's very smart, that doesn't matter as much because it's more seamless. And yet even Google Glass, which everybody said, well, it's dead. Google has said, it's not dead yet. Google Glass is not dead yet. In fact, Google Glass is being developed for a lot of uses in enterprise. I was just talking to a gentleman who is a vet, a veterinarian doctor, and he's saying, I'm doing cool things with it. I'll record operations I do. Doctors in some of the greatest hospitals are doing that as well, but they're a little more reluctant because they're afraid of what they're recording. But it's an incredible way to show other students of medicine what really takes place in an operating room. So it's not dead in terms of this hands-free, heads-up device that you can wear, and it can connect you with people across the globe to help you, to help them. This is what Google Glass looked like just a few years ago. Google Glass, I can tell you as an explorer who wasn't very happy with the product because it didn't have connectivity as often as I would like it to have, it was still a pretty cool device. I recall being on a trolley in San Francisco, and there's a sign that says, don't use your smartphones for pictures, because they've gotten tired of tourists dropping their cameras and jumping off the trolleys, which is a dangerous thing to do anywhere. but I'm wearing Google Glass at the time, and people are wondering, why is he winking so much? Because I had an app that let me wink, not blink, wink, and I could take pictures. It was a pretty cool thing. Or if I was in New York City and I wanted to get from point A to point B, but I wasn't quite sure exactly how to get there, I could say, glass, okay, glass, directions to, and then I would hear it. It has amazing possibilities, and we'll see evolutions of it. And Google is not to be trifled with. They're already working on contacts, not working on contacts, they have contacts that have technologies that do things like let a diabetic know when there are problems that should be addressed. They also have a patent for contacts with cameras. And DARPA is working on contacts that will give us the fiction-like ability to see things far away without putting on any sort of additional device, but just walking down a street potentially and blinking perhaps. Are you ready to market here on a smartphone? In a very short period of time, over 3 million of these devices were sold, and a lot of people said, well, it's crashed. They're not selling anymore. I think they probably have tapped out the market of people who are willing to spend about $1,000 on a watch. I think that's the problem. And now Google is going to come out with its own watch, and Pebble had a watch and has a variety of watches, but when Apple enters a game, it's a game changer. And now for all of you who are marketers and business people, you've got to figure out, how do I disrupt or become disrupted? You've got to figure out, how do I tap into wearable technology? How do I tap into the Internet of Things? And I have no doubt that in this audience here today, there will be multimillionaires from the Internet of Things, because you will have thought of something very clever that is very obvious, but the rest of us don't see it. But you'll tap into it because you'll put your imagination to task. And that's the magic of the opportunity of the Internet of Things. You likely have all worn some sort of wearable device, connected device already. And now the luxury market is moving in and making those devices look a little cooler so that they become fashion accessories and become easier for us to wear and integrate into our day-to-day activities. We've got to be attentive, though, as we have those devices, to not alienate our community of consumers, because ultimately what the Internet of Things should do should make our experience of living more connected to each other, more seamless, more exciting. Fitbit, when it first came out with its device, wanted to make every person who used one have its settings to social sharing immediately. And then a clever reporter made note of the fact that it was recording activity at nighttime, and the activity was not running at night. And Fitbit had to scramble and take down the information that was sharing nocturnal activities of its wearers. So as you go into the space of the Internet of Things as business people, as marketers, you've got to be very, very careful with the information that you have and the information that you share, because it's the most intimate information that you can have. Your consumers are already there when you think of the numbers that have already purchased an Apple Watch and are planning to buy an Apple Watch, and then are planning to get a Google Watch or myriad of other devices that will make the scale and the cost accessible to really everyone. And how are hotels using this? How are businesses using this? And it's not so different than how they use a smartphone. With a smart watch, it's simply, how do we create text? How do we create information? How do we create something that creates a user experience that's beneficial to our customers, that deepens brand loyalty? I like the fact that I don't have to pull out my smartphone and I can just glance at my watch instead, and I get an alert from Marriott that says, if you want to check into the hotel, you can. Or I get an alert from United that says, your plane's on schedule, do you want to check in now? It's about creating user experience that is seamless, that is beneficial, that's not an interruption to my day, but rather an advantage. I have a device that gives me an advantage because I can now do a lot of stuff and get a lot of information. We're in an age of information overload, I understand that, But the reality is we're going to want to continue to access that information, but how we do it is something that the Internet of Things is going to make a lot easier. These are just additional examples of how a smartwatch is being used, a connected wearable device is being used already by larger brands to make the experience of doing what you ordinarily do with them easier, more seamless. It's not just checking in, but in some hotels, it's a matter of you've got a smartwatch, you check in, and you can go directly to your room, and you've got the key on your wrist. We already know the fact that Ralph Lauren has developed wearable shirts that kind of act like a Fitbit, and they provide a lot of information. You get a shirt that comes with a mobile app that you download, and suddenly it's telling you about how much your exercise is improving your efficiencies and all of that. How many folks heard about that Polo connected shirt? All right, there's a few. So I'm going to guess that even fewer have heard about Project Jacquard, which is a collaboration between Google and Levi's. And think of that collaboration between one of the oldest clothing manufacturers in America and Google. And what are they going to do? They've said what they're going to do. We're going to make your clothes connected devices. Now, you might think, all right, so that's not such a big deal because that's where we are already. We've got Polo and others who have already entered the space, and they've made shirts that are like Fitbits. What's the big deal about Google and Levi's saying that we're going to collaborate? Ultimately, when we talk about wearable technology, we want enchanted devices. We don't want this. We want to be an Avenger. We want to be able to do things that we can't do otherwise. And what we're talking about with the collaboration between Levi's and Google isn't simply measuring your heartbeat and all of that. They're talking about having the materials woven in, connectivity into your clothing that might allow you to gesture and open a door. And so what they're focused on in some respects is this enterprise integration of wearable technology, not just for you in your day-to-day activities, but to say your employees might wear a uniform, and if they do, it might be able to open doors or certainly track where you're going. And certainly there's always that other element to it, which is the tracking of it. But we're already getting desensitized to it or sensitized to it, depending on your perspective on it. Disney is one of the greatest innovators in the enchantment space, the wearable technology space. And think about this example of Disney. You get a MagicBand. That's what we want. We want enchantment. It's personalized to you. You don't just get one choice, here it is. You get all kinds of cool bands to wear. You as a marketer want to create a personal connection that just isn't one time, one location. I noted a tweet as I was researching this topic, and somebody is saying, like, it's been a month since we've been away from our Disney trip, but we're still wearing our MagicBands. And the MagicBand opens a door to your room. And the MagicBand makes it real easy when your kids say, well, I'd like to buy something from the store. You can't say you don't have your credit card because you have your MagicBand. You just wave your MagicBand. And when you get home, you get thousands of pictures to choose from because wherever you've gone in the Magic Kingdom, your MagicBand has recorded the magic moment for you. So you might say, all right, that's cool, but I'm not Disney. You're not Disney. I don't know if I had my Facebook Bluetooth with me, but if you're a business, you can tap into the Internet of Things. You can tap into the Internet of Things by, for example, if you're on Facebook, and most businesses are now, simply saying to Facebook, I'd like to get a Bluetooth device from you. And they'll happily send you one. And you say, well, how much is that going to cost me? Nothing. The hardware costs you nothing. Ah, that's the devil's in the detail. What's the monthly fee? Nothing. The age of connected devices, it's the data that becomes so important and so rich. They're getting data from you, although right now Facebook says that they're not collecting data. if you believe them at that. I don't know. But it's pretty cool for you as a small business because you just get this free device, and what does the device do? It allows you to message people as they come into your establishment. It allows them to see more immediately who their friends are that have gone to your place. So it is taking this sensor device and connecting it to your customers. And I think you're going to see this as a model more and more. So don't think, well, I don't have to worry so much about the Internet of Things because, frankly, I as a small business can't tap into it. You can. Because it's a matter of, I think again and again you're going to see, it's a matter of you affirmatively saying, I want Apple Pay to be in my store. I want to use this particular app that will appear on somebody's smartwatch then, so now I'm a smart business. Dash came out with a pretty, it seemed to me, primitive sort of device. You get it from as part of your Amazon Prime, and it's something that you kind of paste on a wall and you press a button when you want to be resupplied. I'm going to imagine that that's not very difficult to put together, and that we're going to see Dash buttons, and if you're a small business and you've got a friend who's a little more techie than you are, or maybe you're that techie person, you'll be able to do this as well. So the Internet of Things is going to become much more accessible to all of us, and our challenge is going to be, how do we tap into it? And it is this gold mine of information. Some of you, if you're in the financial services, might say to yourself, well, the Internet of Things, all of that is cool for people who are doing other things than financial services. So I can tune this out because it's really not relevant to me in my industry. That's not so. Here's an example of a financial service that said, let's imagine using a wearable device as a tool that will leverage a financial services firm. And they said, all right, so whether it's Google Glass or a smartwatch, it's tracking you wherever you go all the time. And you go into this neat coffee shop and you say to yourself, this coffee shop is going to be big someday. I wonder if it's on the stock exchange because I'm going to want to buy some stock if it is. You tap your financial services app that's on your watch, and suddenly it gives you an option to buy stock because it's geotagged the place and it's now told you whether or not it's on the stock market. But what this financial firm imagined was something even beyond that. They said, we're going to protect our customers as well. If we sense that they may be out of sorts because there's biometric reading, if their heart rate is a little too much, we might shut them down from buying stock. Think of that. So then think of what that implies in terms of the information that you're sharing through biometrics. Biometrics, simply the reading of your heart pace. The information that you get when you're running suddenly is saying something potentially about your emotional state as well. All of this information that's being gathered is being gathered in a way that hopefully makes user experience much more enjoyable, much more seamless. And so now as you walk down the street, we're familiar with this already, you may get a message. And the message may tell you about what's near you and what bargains are by you. She's doing it old school because she actually is walking and she has to hazard herself by looking at her smartphone as opposed to just taking a glance at her watch or having her watch send her a message that tells her, by the way, that favorite store is on your left. And when you get into that favorite store, it gives you a coupon. And what we're talking here is the notion of proximity marketing. Knowing that an identifiable device has been to your establishment before, or that it's on a social network that suddenly you're part of, and you are then going to get information about that consumer, although it is quote-unquote anonymized, meaning you don't know it's necessarily that person, but when they walk into your store, you're going to have some inclination about what it is they might be interested in. And what we know from the surveys is that although everyone says, I want to protect my privacy, first and foremost, statistically, your privacy is worth about $3. Because if you get a $3 coupon, I can pretty much get you to agree to let me have access to a lot of your data. So that's the harsh reality of our position when it comes to privacy and the Internet of Things. A point that I want to emphasize is this notion in my mind of the fact that the Internet of Things, first and foremost, should be about people. It's not about things, it's about people. It's connecting devices, certainly, but it should be serving our experience with our brands, with our homes, with our cars, first and foremost. And if you as a business person or you as an entrepreneur are able to tap into the Internet of Things, the potential that you have is unbelievable. We've already seen what happens with connected cars and other devices that suddenly people understand, if there's a way that I can take that data and share it in a way that makes a person's ride far more efficient, I can Uberize a big company. I can disrupt a big industry just by my understanding of the fact that I can share and give information. And that information is all big data. It's the big data that becomes small data. And when you begin to study the space a little bit more, you will hear the phrase big data all the time, and you'll get tired of it. But big data is that enormous amount of information that's being broadcast by your phone, by your smartwatch, by your smart sneakers. And the challenge is to get that information and make it usable. You probably, if you're a marketer, know the old example of how in Target a young lady got a letter saying, congratulations on your baby to be, and here's some coupons for you to get baby stuff. And her father intercepted the letter and went to the store in a rage saying, how is it that you're sending my daughter who's in high school coupons for having a baby? Well, it turns out she was pregnant. And how did Target know that she was pregnant? Because she ordered certain vitamins that were associated with an expecting mother. She got a larger than average purse associated with an expecting mother. She got a certain type of blanket associated with an expecting mother. That's old school. Imagine what predictions we can make about consumers if we know their every move, if we know when they sleep and when they don't. That's the big data. Already, Amazon has said, we can predict when you're going to buy something. We can know it before you even know it because of your buying habits. And ultimately, there will come a day, we believe, Amazon, that we'll be able to predict what you want to buy before you know you want to buy it. And lo and behold, the drone will deliver it to your house. There it is. Just when you're ready to put that order in that takes so long, like one button, and it's ordered. In the future, not too distant, the moment you do that, it'll say, oh, by the way, it's on your front porch. We kind of guessed you'd want it today. That's the reality. That's not far-fetched. That's the reality of it. But the reality, too, is how do you tap into these connected devices? I asked one of the people on my staff about perhaps for this presentation I could have one of our drones. Yes, we have drones. Come in and be a part of the demonstration. And he promptly said no. I said, why not? He said, because it might hurt somebody. I said, okay, that's a good reason. He said, it moves a little too fast. Probably isn't a good idea. Those are real things that you need to consider when you're tapping into technology is, have we learned to walk before we start running? But you better start walking because being stationary is deadly in all aspects of life. But here's an example of a concept of a drone, and at this point it's probably beyond the concept stage, which is having a drone that's a wristband. You flick your wrist, it flies off, it follows you, takes some selfies of you, and rejoins you. There are larger versions of this, but this just seemed to me to be kind of a cool version. But how would you really use something like this if you're not Amazon? Malta gave an example of how it would tap into the Internet of Things because a drone ultimately is one of those connected devices. And what it did was to make an incredible film of the island of Malta. And when I saw it, I was just wowed. I said, all right, I've always had on my bucket list Malta, but this drone view just raised it up so much higher, so much more quickly. The Internet of Things has enormous possibilities, but it has enormous risk as well because of the information we collect, the sort of technology we're using. Most states, most countries now have very strict laws about how you can or cannot use a connected device such as a drone. And you should research well before you go out and make yourself the coolest video that also makes you have a visit to your local law enforcement agency and a long interview with them. But the technology is there, and the technology is evolving quickly. But I can tell you, I'm, as was mentioned, I'm a lawyer by training, which means I was a liberal arts major, and yet I found myself on just about every wearable technology list that's out there. Why? Because I understand that this is disrupting our world, and I want to be part of the conversation that shapes how it disrupts our world. And my hope and my expectation is that the Internet of Things will, in fact, make our lives more enchanted in positive ways, because in the healthcare space, the use of these technologies is absolutely wonderful and incredible. But for us as marketers, the challenge is how do we tap into it to deepen brand loyalty? And we've seen examples of that, because user experience is what gets us to stay with the company. Marriott lets me know on my watch that I've paid an ungodly sum for, that I can check in now. I'm like, oh, I'm glad I got the watch. Not really. It's much bigger than that. But you understand what I'm saying, which is that there is an opportunity here if you understand that your ability to tap into the Internet of Things isn't far-fetched. In fact, it's a necessity. Small business, medium-sized business, large business, you should become part of the Internet of Things, because, as I said early on, it is first and foremost about people, and it raises that ultimate question: will you be the disruptor or the disrupted? And we now live in that age when the largest transportation company in the world doesn't own a single car, and the largest accommodations establishment in the world doesn't own a single hotel. And they've all tapped into the Internet of Things. And that's why earlier I mentioned as well, I have no doubt that within this room there's somebody here, or a few of you here, and I hope you call me when this happens, early on, early stage, that will develop something, because you'll have the imagination of tapping into the Internet of Things to improve user experience and to make the consumer experience much more enchanted. Thank you. I guess I should ask if anyone has any questions. We have a couple, ma'am, and then I'll, yes. Sure. So the question is, big data, how is it being tapped into? How is it being used to automate potentially social media engagement? Would that be right? Everyone everywhere who is a data scientist is trying to use big data to automate everything. And it's a frightening age we live in which some of the best reporters have had this robotic challenge of, here's some information about a news story, write a news story. And artificial intelligence writes it even faster and gets it out even faster. And what is the difference between the two stories? It's nuanced. I believe that always in the age of technology, people who have creative skills, who have emotional intelligence, will have an important role, because I don't believe that even big data, with all of its bells and whistles, will have the sensitivity that we as individuals do. And I think that will become a crucial gatekeeper role, although it's open to challenge, certainly. There was another question? Yes, ma'am.
Oh yeah, as a parent with a child with special needs, I'm very, very interested in the biofeedback that can come from wearables because of safety and health and also independent living. But I'm also concerned because I don't necessarily want all of that information to be tracked by anyone else except for me. So what are sort of the boundaries or the guidelines as they're developing these products?
As an attorney by profession, without giving legal advice, that cautionary note, the Federal Trade Commission has an abundance of information about the limitations on the sharing of data, the protection of data, the use of data, particularly when it comes to children. Unfortunately, so many of the wearable devices we're seeing and the connected devices we're seeing are out of compliance. Or even if they're not out of compliance, they sometimes leak. And some of the biggest incidents we've seen where there have been regulatory action have been by companies that touted the fact that these were secure products, like a camera, even more basic, but a camera that watches your child and lets you know that the child is safe, and then we find out it's been hacked and that camera stream has been fed to the web. It is something that we always have to be careful about and mindful about, but it's always a risk that's out there. It doesn't matter how secure something is told to be and how strict our laws are. It's going to be a challenge for industry, and people ask, well, how will we make this work? I believe the industry will make it work because the industry will understand that if it breaches our most intimate information, we won't use the products, and they want us to use the products. But you right now, it's a tough thing. I know I've seen studies that talk about even the use of Google Glass to help autistic children understand better emotional reads of other people. It's wonderful possibilities, but certainly you're going to be concerned, what information is it giving about my child, and understandably and rightfully so. Any other questions? Send me a tweet, connect with me. I'm happy to continue the conversation. Thanks, everybody.